just in continuing the leadership from the dance, I next became like involved with talent shows that were indoors and outdoors. So they had amphitheaters out in East New York that I would work with some people who were also into helping the youth, and we would coordinate outdoor talent competitions and showcases in the amphitheater, right in East New York. People would come to sing, dance, rap. It would go anywhere in the summertime from 7 p.m. up to about 10 or 11, which means we had a chance to bring in our spotlights for the night shift, and microphones, and paint up the whole place so that it kind of looked professional. It was the first time in years that the amphitheater had been used for any such activity. That drew a lot of young people. We used to call it old school meets new school. And we would call all the community DJs out to participate, the rappers, the dancers, the MCs. And it went on for at least 6 years, before I moved from one location to the next, So, but there are some people that are left behind today that still do things in that area.
What are some of your greatest accomplishments, not just in your professional dance career, but like you said, the community events? So list all of those things that you did as a community leader, and along with your dance career, some of your greatest accomplishments.
Wow, I think in general, some of the, if you want to call them great accomplishments, I like the fact of being a role model that was also a person who loved to read and write, because I didn't want to be one of those people that was just a performer. This thing about dancing and singing and then giving the impression that we can't read and write or we don't like to read and write, that never worked for me. In fact, in my family, we couldn't just not go to school. If we did nothing else, my mother made sure we were going to school. We tried to bring up an excuse, I have a headache. She'd give us an aspirin and we were out the door. My stomach, you had Pepto-Bismol and you was out the door. If you didn't have to go to the hospital, you were not staying home. So we were kind of like constantly pushed to do the academics. And from doing that, you inspire other people to want to finish school. In the long run, you get, of course, in their own way, I think they award you. But my real award in terms of accomplishment is when I find young people who are also now reaching out and doing what they had as their dreams. You see, that's more important, because to just be there and say, hey, it's okay to do this and this is how you can do it, that's one thing. But to see them actually step up and do it, whether it's get up and go for a further education and get their college degrees, which that has happened for a lot, that's fine. If it's something like get up and be a role model in terms of entertainment and that's what you want to do and be successful, that's fine. The point is, as long as you do you and you have a dream and you follow it, as opposed to sitting back waiting for somebody to do everything for you, can't happen. I believe in think and do. So ultimately, the last of my favorite achievements in entertainment was being able to go around from city to city or even country to country and inspire some of the new school lockers. In New York, we have some of my students and friends who participate in international competitions. A lot of times they share. Even though they win, they come back as teachers and they share. So they become role models in today's school of locking. Whether it's Firelock or Hurricane or Abdullah or Lucas Lock, whoever it is, as long as they can share a new flavor of this spirit of the dance. Something that we got from the lockers was never be a plain old copycat, copying moves. Mr. Don Campbell always said you have to bring yourself to the table. Otherwise, there's no sense of originality from you. You can't just go on, for example, trying to be Don Campbell or Fluky Lou or Shabba-Doo. You have to say, what can I do that Don didn't do, or in a way that Don or Fluky Lou didn't do? This is what we call being yourself and bringing something to the table. A lot of people have missed that in the world of locking, They think it's about simply copying the moves that the lockers have done. That's nice, but it's not the essence of the dance. The essence of the dance is freestyle. So the question becomes, what do you bring to the table? In one episode of 2010, So You Think You Can Dance, I was working with one young fella, Isolok, and his concept he wanted to work with was isolations. And not knowing anything about the locking, he wasn't even sure what he could do with the isolation. But from my background and mind, which is where isolations come from, partially, you can incorporate isolations and locking like you can do anything else. And he was at that time wondering, would I be able to do this in time for the next So You Think You Can Dance? Sure. Will I have my own name and identity? I already know who you are, I said to him, Isolok. All you have to do is work together so we can mix these isolations with the concept of locking. It's not simple. You just have to listen and practice. Focus is really the key.
Do you think the dancers from your generation are doing all they can to inspire the youth now? Because it seems to be a gap, in the dance world, even in the world itself, a gap between, the elders and, the young generation. Do you think that the older dancers are doing all they can to ensure that the dance is preserved and that the messages like you're putting out about education and everything, are all the older dancers doing what they need to do to instill that and preserve it?
I can't say they're all of anything because there's never all, but there are some, who are doing the best they can. And this is the trick that you must understand. What people are doing, that actually is what they can do. Because there's a concept, you don't know what you don't know. And if they don't know what they don't know, and they think that what they do know is all they can do, that's it. And it's not for them to do. It's for someone else to do. So for those who do know, and I say you need two ingredients in this case, you need courage and you need creativity, because one without the other won't work. Why? Because you can be very, very creative and be able to teach a lot of people new ways of doing things. But if you're afraid to do it because you're worried about what the other folks are going to say, it's not going to happen. On the flip side of that, you can be very courageous and be willing to do it, whatever it is, but at the same time, you're not creative. So even though you're bold enough to do something, you don't have the something to do. So you need both creativity and the courage to do it. See, I find that some people just don't get a simple definition of creativity. So they really don't know how to be creative, how to be different. So what do I say to at least my students to get it moving? Creativity is doing something old in a new or different way. In the same way when we were growing up, they had black and white TV. In order to be creative and do something new, someone had to come up with the idea of color. And when they got that concept of technology together and incorporated color into black and white TV, there is where you had the first color TV. Fast forward a little bit to the world of computer technology. In the early days, they had IBM, which was the massive computers. Someone had an idea that we should have smaller computers. So there was a company like Compaq, and they made what they call mini computers, easier to travel with. Someone else did something called super mini computers. So in other words, notice how it's building off what was already done, and you're just doing something a little bit different. It applies to dance just as in locking. So you say, well, if the lockers, for example, had different people in it, and they all had a certain flavor of locking, what must I do to be creative? Well, find out a way to do it opposite the way they did it. Okay? If they did a bunch of, for example, half splits, Well, you should incorporate that with a mixture of full splits. No one said that you can only do half splits and locking. Where's your own personality? In other words, what have you brought to the table is an example done even by the lockers. Toni Basil was a ballet dancer. So she brought in some of her techniques from ballet, pirouettes and spins. Fluky Luke was a cheerleader. So he brought in his cartwheels and splits. But the fun part, he was a bit of double jointed also. So that was something that no one else had in the team. Fred Berrier, very good soulful dancer. I used to party with him in a place out here called The Loft. Even without locking, he was a good dancer on the dance floor. So he brought in that spirit of fun and extreme character. You know, an absolute entertainer. The Lockers were the only dance team from the streets in that day that was nominated as Entertainers of the Year. So what did that say? You're an entertainer first. Then you concern yourself with the moves and all the other stuff. And not only did they start a dance trend, they actually started a fashion trend. So when you think about being creative, you have to say, how can I add to not just the moves of these dances, but the fashion trend? Because you have to keep that going. You don't have to wear everything exactly the way the Lockers wore it in the 70s. This is 211, going into 212. Where's your creativity? Some people, they have guides and coaches, and they think that if they do something different, it's going to offend their coach. And I say, well, if creativity offends your coach, perhaps you need a new coach. If being different offends your coach, perhaps you need a new coach. Because you have to express yourself. Once you educate your children on how to be responsible and they become adults, you don't make them do everything that you've done the way you did it. You've coached them to be an individual. They have a mind of their own. Same thing in dance. You coach students to be who they are. In fact, what I used to say to my people is, the fastest way out of my group is to try to be a twin Shocka. It's not going to work.
Where do you see street dance, in the next 10 years? Or where would you like to see it?
Now, this thing about where you see street dance in 10 years, first of all, I like to be real. It's like trying to set a map in school. Where am I going to be in 10 years? No, you can have a vision, and that vision applies to you, but you have to make it happen. It has nothing to do, for example, with the commercial world. Sometimes we sit and wait for the outside world to do things, and then we want to fit in. No. Everybody I speak to, I ask them first to start with their purpose. Why are you here? Because when you are clear about why you're here, you get a vision as to where you want to go. Once you get a vision of where you want to go, you begin to think of specific missions. What must I do to make the vision a reality? So if I want to see a vision of the dance in a circus that was focused on street dance, then that's my vision. That's what I would create. In fact, that is what I've started on. Okay? I don't wait for people to tell me which way to go. So the trick that we have to do is find out where the imagination would send us. And then put it in our minds that that's where we want to go. And do everything in our power, because we can be whatever we want to be. Once we think it, that's the power of God in us. Allowing us to know you can be whatever you want to be. It doesn't matter what any other person said. The universe is so vast, people don't even understand. It has given you the power to be what you want to be. So I say, think big. Have your vision and put it out in the universe. And the universe will help you make it a reality.
Is there anybody, dancers, family, friends in particular that you want to thank, for supporting you along your journey?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I always have to thank, rest in peace, the godfather of the soul, Mr. James Brown, great inspiration. Have to thank my mother because she encouraged me to dance all the time. You know, when I wasn't doing my schoolwork, it was okay to dance. I have to thank the original Campbell dancers because it gave me something else to fool around with and experiment with. And without the whole thing about the locking, obviously I wouldn't be Shocka today. And then I probably wouldn't have such pleasant students who respect and appreciate locking and helping other people. So I'm thinking a whole generation before me, with me, and even after me. Because that's what happens when you work to inspire. Inspiration lasts forever. So I think the whole world of street dance.